totes. I don't know about you, but for me, Halloween is all about horror, classic slashers, candy, and costumes. And in the spirit of all that, we're going to be taking a look at some good old B horror schlock from Comp 3 Interactive. Rewind or Die. Published by Torture Star Video, which is a subsidiary of Puppet Combo, Rewind or Die will have you running for your life in a bid to survive the night. This game is full of B-horror tropes, so I made a little bingo card here because that's more fun than just a checklist. Just so you guys know, this bingo card has been randomized, so I have no idea if I'm going to get a bingo or not. And as for the description of what's in the squares, that will be explained when we mark them off going through the video, and I'll explain the ones we didn't get at the end. So, let's see if we can get a bingo. I'm not gonna waffle on for this intro, so let's just go ahead and dive into Rewind or Die. Meet Tony, employee of the local video rental store Video to Go. He's about to receive news that will change the course of his night for the worse.
That was Keith. Wanted to cover the evening shift. Michelle hasn't turned up for work.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Isn't Dave in?
It's really busy, apparently.
I hate you so much. You know that, right?
Better get a jog on, mate. You know what he's like.
Yeah, well, next time, tell him to shove it, yeah?
Tony leaves the cramped apartment with reluctance, and outside we can see the dark and dreary city he resides in. A perfect setting for something sinister. As he makes his way down the sidewalk, he passes by an abandoned newspaper that catches his attention. The remains of a woman were discovered outside of Eden Heights Flats. Looks like this place isn't exactly a safe neighborhood. He eventually comes upon a blockage of his route and heads down the sketchy-looking alley with some trepidation. That trepidation recedes when he spots man's best friend with his bedraggled counterpart warming themselves by a makeshift fire.
You are. Yes, you are.
Another newspaper lays nearby. He shakes his head when the headline catches his eye. The slaughterhouse was shut down due to the council's machinations. The locals weren't happy about this, especially the ones who lost their jobs. When trying to exit the alley, Tony's new cologne will attract the attention of the homeless man who gives him a big ol' sniff. And an ominous warning.
Tread carefully, boy, for today could be your last among the living.
Ignoring that weird interaction, Tony heads on into Video to Go. The place is absolutely packed with a total of 2 customers. Dave is nowhere to be seen, so Tony gets right to work. His first customer of the night is a death metal enthusiast with an embarrassing porn addiction.
Shit.
After dealing with him, a muffled buzzing sound will catch Tony's attention. It's Dave's phone, and the conversation is one-sided and weird.
Hello? Is anyone there? Can you hear me? Please answer. Please.
Not knowing what to make of that, other than Dave is a freak, he heads back to help the only other customer left in the store.
Hey there. Do you want to know a movie fact?
No. Dave still hasn't shown his face, and there's an odd sound coming from the bathroom. When Tony decides to check the situation out, he finds Dave has shat himself into a coma, which he abruptly wakes from.
Jesus! Can't a man take a dump in peace?
The bathroom looks like a shit-stained war zone left in Dave's wake, and Tony vows not to be the one responsible for it. Besides, he has a visitor.
Hi there, my name's Timothy. I'm a journalist for the Evening Standard.
Timmy is chasing down the story of the disappearances around the area and wants to interview the Video to Go staff. Unfortunately for him, they don't have anything to add.
Sorry, but we know about as much as you do right now.
He'll leave with some disappointment, however, he hasn't given up.
Something's going on in there, and I'm going to find out what.
Still, it's dangerous on these streets, and he decides to head back into the office. Or that was his intention.
What the hell was that?
Whether it's out of genuine concern or the chance of another story, Timothy runs to the scene of the crash. Amidst all the blood and filth, he notices the logo emblazoned on the side of the van, and figures out it's from the now-defunct chop shop. But he sees no one there, harmed or unharmed, only a large amount of blood on the pavement. Deciding to investigate further, he passes through the damaged fence and ventures into the lot. There's nothing special here at first glance, but upon further inspection, Tim notices an awful smell coming from the stack of boxes, and a pool of blood on the ground underneath. Undeterred by the stench, he moves the boxes aside to find the shocking sight of a pig's head sitting on the ground. Our poor reporter doesn't get much time to wallow in his shock as he's roughly pushed from behind. When he turns to see his assailant, he's met with the horrifying image of a man wearing a pig's head and wielding a meat hook. Dread and fear fill his mind as he realizes this is the man that's been prowling the streets. This is the monster he's been chasing, and it found him. A few hours later, Tony looks at the clock and is relieved to see it's closing time. It won't be long before he can go home and return to that well-worn couch. He's just got a few closing duties left to attend to first. Dave holds the key to the store and Tony finds him sitting like a useless sack of potatoes in the back room.
I'm gonna head out. You can close alone, right? Oh, you'll be fine. I'm meeting Michelle tonight. I really need to go and get ready.
Tony stares at the shit stain on Dave's pants and wonders if he's lying, or if Michelle has low standards.
If you know what I mean.
He spies some poetry Dave has doodled while avoiding work in the back room. It's terrible. Tony will hear the door chime and hopes it's not another customer. Tonight has already been long enough and it was supposed to be his day off. To his surprise, it's the police.
Look, if it's about the TV license, I'm gonna pay it. I just forgot.
The detective is here to ask him for customer information for his investigation into the missing people.
We're sort of at a loss at this point, but we did notice that every one of the missing persons had a video to go account.
Tony is compliant, and the detective thanks him for his cooperation and leaves with a little light-hearted teasing.
And Mr. Brown, try to remember to pay that TV license.
With him gone, Tony breathes a sigh of relief and gets to work. As he takes the trash out to the bin, Tony feels a little better. Just one more thing to do on the list and he can get out of here. With his thoughts preoccupied, he turns and is startled by the presence of another person. Lucky for him, it's someone he recognizes, a man he calls Captain.
Don't do that.
He and Cap speak on the disappearances in the area, and the Captain laments that at least Tony has a safe place he can return to, while Cap has to stay out on the streets with no locked door between him and whatever menace is stalking their streets.
We'll have a rest back here if that's alright with you.
Tony realizes it's not an ideal situation, and the least he can do is allow the fellow to bed down behind the store for the night. Before heading back in to finish up, Tony sees yet another newspaper mentioning the council's plans to allow contractors to bid on the plot reserved for the Eden Heights Memorial, which was established for those lost to a terrible fire in 1974. A thought flickers through his head, and he wonders if the current disappearances might make the area undesirable enough to hinder the council's plans. But that's neither here nor there for him. All that matters is getting home. Returning to the front desk, a broadcast catches his attention, and he pauses to listen.
Police have found the body of an adult male. The body has been heavily mutilated. Police advise that all citizens return to their homes immediately and lock all doors and windows.
This whole situation has escalated, and it makes Tony even more eager to leave. Unfortunately for Tony, he won't be finishing without interruption. As he's putting movies back on the shelf, he hears a knock. When he investigates, he sees a silhouette of a man with a pig head. Thinking he's just some weirdo, he tells him to leave. The visitor does, but not before uttering an ominous promise. Only a few minutes later, Tony hears a loud crash and runs to see someone has thrown a brick through the window.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Who does something like this?
He grabs the note attached to the brick and is unsettled by its content. Not long now, Piglet. Setting it back down, he heads to the back and gives his boss a ring.
Hello?
Keith isn't pleased to be getting a call from the store, but after hearing what happened, he tells Tony to board the window up and he'll be there soon.
Well, I'm glad to hear you care about the safety of your staff.
Don't be a smartass. I'll be there soon.
After grabbing the boards and securing the window, the phone rings.
Pissing hell, who's this now? Can't I just get an easy shift for once in my life?
Tired of the interruptions, he stomps to the back and answers, thinking it's Keith.
Hello? Keith?
It's not Keith.
We're going to have fun tonight.
The call strikes enough fear in him that he's ready to go now, Keith or no Keith.
Screw waiting for Keith, I'm getting out of here right now.
However, before he can leave, a bang and a scream comes from the back door. It sounds like Captain is in trouble, but self-preservation is kicked in for Tony. The back door is a no-go and the front door's too risky. He devises the best escape route to be the vents. He makes it just in time as he can hear the pig man bash his way into the store. With trepidation and adrenaline running, he crawls through the vents while being taunted by the killer below. The hook he wields pierces through the vent, thankfully missing Tony every time, but still too close for comfort. As he scrambles to his exit, he passes over a grate with a view into a room he's never seen before. Inside is a pig plushie and newspaper clippings pinned to a corkboard. There's no time to dwell on that though. Tony needs to get out of there. The sight that greets him upon his exit is a gruesome one. The homeless man from earlier lies in pieces in the alleyway. He doesn't get time to process what he's seeing, as the stalking pigman is right behind him. Thus begins a chase. Tony runs through the alley while his assailant runs after him, calling out to him in that deep, guttural voice. After passing by some heavy metal shelving, he stops to tip it over and block the way of his pursuer, giving him a moment to catch his breath. Tony thinks he's shaken the pigman for a moment, but is proven to be wrong. The adrenaline surges and he flees. His speed are swift, but fate has chosen to work against him, as the grating underfoot gives way and sends him tumbling to the ground below. He survived the fall, but when his eyes open once again, he may have wished he hadn't.
Can't outrun me, piglet.
When we next return to Tony, he awakes to see the pigman, aka Slaw. The place is a disgusting mix of a barn, slaughterhouse, and prison. Exactly the place one would envision a creature like Slaw to inhabit. Tony isn't alone in this nightmare. To his right sits Timothy the reporter. He's non-responsive and sits there with his hands on his head in a weeping mess. Tony decides that ain't gonna be him, and by some stroke of luck finds that there's a hole at the back of his cell that's been concealed by cupboard doors. Not wanting to wait around and find out what Slaw has planned for him, he shimmies through and navigates the area behind the walls until he finds a hole to drop down. The room he lands in is even more disgusting than the last. The floor is carpeted with a layer of rotting blood and viscera. The walls hold numerous tally marks. What they can mean eludes him, but he's sure it's nothing good. When searching for a way out, Tony discovers that everything down here is locked tight. There will be no quick escape this way. His only course of action will be to navigate this hellish place while hoping Slaw doesn't find him. The scenes of grotesquerie will only become more commonplace as Tony works his way through this prison. Through the tannery door, he'll be greeted with the grim and gruesome artistic vision of a human flayed to the bone, hung up on meat hooks to look like a sacrilegious angel. He fears this will be his future, and quickly runs to the next room. He gains a little hope when he spots a van, but he has no keys, and the doors are barred shut with a heavy wooden plank. He'll have to figure out how to get that open if he has any hope of getting out of here. During his careful exploration, he'll hear the whimper of a dog and finds yet another of Slaw's kidnapped victims. The lock on the cage is overkill, not something he'll just be able to pry off. Tony will have to leave him for now, but vows to find a way to save that pup, along with himself. After finding a key to a cell and a locker labeled Mike, he'll hear the screams of the reporter. It's a grim and awful thought, but if Slaw is busy with him, that gives Tony some time to work on his escape. And sure enough, when Tony returns to the cells, the reporter is gone, and in his cell lies something he can use, a hand crank, and a note written by a former prisoner that details just how much Slaw delights in both physical and psychological torture. To his surprise, he'll also find Captain locked in one of the furnace rooms.
Listen, you've got to get me out of here before that freak comes back.
He managed to survive the attack on him behind the video store, but not unscathed. Tony will have to find a way to get him out before Slaw decides to burn him to a crisp. As with his act, Tony can't free him right away, but he'll do his best to free him when he can. Through a series of unlocking doors through various means, Tony will find the van key hidden within the neck stub of the sniffing homeless man he met earlier in the night. There's nothing for it now, so he takes the key and... Tony did not anticipate the alarm going off. He knows Slaw had to have heard that, and quickly runs back to his cell.
Oh shit, the gate!
Making sure to close the door behind him. Tony makes entrance into the freezer after finding the lever he needs in the poor homeless guy's hand. And inside, there are frozen skeletons and corpses of pigs and humans hanging side by side. The revulsion is strong, but he perseveres and finds a crowbar stuck into one of said bodies. It's not much, but maybe it could provide some means of defense. Slaw isn't gonna make it that easy for him, though. The door's still shut with Slaw's chuckling face on the other side. He now has 20 seconds to stop the panel shutdown, or he will become just like the rest of the frozen corpses that decorate this frozen hell.
Control panel shutdown.
Against the odds, Tony manages to disengage the safety locks, but it's all for naught. An error has occurred, leaving the door locked shut. And in his infinite bad luck, the floor beneath him crumbles and sends him plummeting to the sewers below. In his descent, he realizes this had all been part of Slaw's sadistic game. The sewers. Dark, dank, and stank. The most foul level of many games. And this one is no exception. Thanks. I hate it. Tony will be put to the test in this new area he's found himself in, for he isn't alone down here. Slaw is on the hunt and will stalk Tony, never too far behind. And all the while, the man has to run around this maze of brick and mortar to pull levers and flip switches in order to escape this horrible nightmare of a game Slaw has devised.
Oh, thank God. You've got to help. There's some freak.
Tony will have many close calls, but manages to outrun and outwit his tormentor. With no time to waste, Tony crawls through another vent and comes upon a bearded man in a security uniform. His entire lower half is gone, but somehow he stayed alive long enough to tell Tony about the location of a gun, a way to put the pig man down. As the man breathes his last, Tony knows what he has to do. Passing by a grate, Tony will stop to look into the room to see the fate of Timothy. All the while, Slaw laughs like the maniac he is. Though, it seems like his luck is turning around when he finds a power pack on the wall. Just the thing he needs to free Captain with. Remembering to turn the gas valve off beforehand ensures Captain's safe retrieval.
Thanks, Tony. I thought it was a gunner for sure. Come on.
With the security guard's directions in mind, Tony will gain the code to the loft upstairs, where the prized gun is hidden within a crate.
This still works.
So far, he hadn't seen or heard Slaw around, but that'll change when he tries to leave. But the playing field has now been swayed in Tony's favor. Slaw charges again and again, seemingly almost impervious to pain. But even his monstrous body can no longer sustain the full force attack, and he succumbs to his injuries.
Looks like this little piggy isn't going home.
Along with the gun, Tony found the circuit breaker he needs to power up the shredder, which shuttles out the keycard he needs to finally unlock the door to freedom. Like any proper slasher villain, Slaw makes one more appearance to attack Tony. Yet our survivor will get the upper hand and send the pigman right down into the shredder. You won't be coming back from that. Or will he?
No.
Now, I bet you thought Tony forgot something. A little four-legged furry something. But I assure you, he didn't. However, freeing him will steer this story from slasher to a more absurdly eldritch flavor. Enacting violence on stuffed plushy effigies will lead Tony into the fight of his life against a giant, demonic, plushy pig. After this fevered dream of events, he is rewarded with a pair of bolt cutters, which he uses to finally free the dog. And now he, Captain, and Zack walk unhindered out of the open doors, safe in the knowledge that the pig-headed man will no longer be stalking their neighborhood. Or will he? No, he really won't.
Today is November 30th, 1997. Time 13:25. I'm Detective Harry Johnson. With me is Detective Brian Davis. And sitting with us is Keith Williams. Okay, we'll start this interview by...
Listen, I've told you everything I know. I got a call from Tony informing me someone had smashed the shop window. I left the house and got to the shop at around 10 p.m. Tony wasn't there. The shop was trashed. I saw the blood and guy's body at the back of the shop and called you guys. The last time, I don't know where Tony is.
Wait, so Keith was the killer? That's bullshit. You got anything to say? Oh yeah, we didn't get a bingo. But since this is the end of the video, I'll go ahead and explain the ones we didn't get for the ones who are interested. So we have Deus Ex Machina, which is basically the story throwing the characters a bone. Or rather, the sudden appearance of exactly what they need in a seemingly hopeless situation. The gun was verging in that territory, but it didn't quite fit in my opinion. Musical warning. I would say this is when music begins to play to warn the viewer that something is about to happen. Final Girl. Everyone should know what a final girl is. Think of it as the last girl standing. For example, Laurie Strode from Halloween. Red herring. In some movies, there will be misleading evidence pointing towards one person being the villain, when in actuality, it's someone else. Dave almost fit the bill for me, but not quite. Critical loss. When a character loses something important, like when they need to escape but have lost their car keys. There are keys we need to find, but they were never ours to begin with, so it doesn't count. Staring problem. When the villain stares at the character or the camera ominously, whether they know it or not. This one was a fan suggestion in response to my post on X. Thank you for the help. We came close to having that, but I'm not quite sure if it counts. Free space is free space. Don't look. When a character hears something odd and decides to check it out, when we, the audience, know they shouldn't do that. Our reporter came close to taking this one off, but it's another one I'm not really certain about. Foot grab. Usually happens underwater, but basically when the villain grabs a fleeing character's foot in order to, well, stop them from fleeing. Dramatic dark. This is when the lights switch off, cloaking the villain in darkness. Dramatically. Creepy kids. Kids being creepy. No service. When a character's phone has no service in a dire situation. Splitting up. When a group of characters in a horror scenario decides it's a good idea to split up. It never is. And yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you for sticking around this long if you have. You are all the goats. Like, comment, subscribe, I like all that stuff. I have a super thanks if you want to donate to the channel. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you have a safe Halloween, and I'll see you again on The Midnight Goat.